You think you want to be a geisha. You've seen the movies, scrolled through the aesthetic photos, read about the artistry and elegance, the white makeup, the silk kimono worth more than a car, the graceful dance movements that look like floating on air. It seems like the height of sophistication, doesn't it? A life dedicated to art, music, conversation, and beauty. You wouldn't last a week. Before we go any further, smash that subscribe button because we're about to dismantle every romantic notion you have about geisha life. This isn't Memoirs of a Geisha. This isn't a stylized fantasy. This is the historical reality of what life was often like for girls who entered the geisha world in Edo period Japan and early 20th century Kyoto. Let me be clear from the start. The geisha system was built on beauty and artistry, yes, but also on debt, rigid hierarchy, and extreme discipline. These women were highly trained entertainers and cultural figures navigating a system that offered limited freedom. They developed extraordinary skills and, in some cases, social influence, but the cost was immense. Childhood was cut short, personal choice was rare, physical and emotional strain were constant. So let's walk through your life as a geisha, from the moment you're sent away as a child to the daily realities of life in the flower and willow world. Every elegant gesture rests on years of hardship. Every refined skill comes from relentless pressure, and that romantic image, it was carefully constructed and paid for dearly. Ready? Let's begin. Chapter 1. Sold: How You Enter the Hanamachi. You're 6 years old, maybe 7. You don't become a geisha because you dream of it. You become one because your family has no other options. It's the late Edo period, perhaps the 1830s. Your father is a farmer who's endured years of poor harvests. Taxes have stripped the household of nearly everything. Your mother takes on extra work, but it isn't enough. There are younger siblings to feed, and resources are running out. Someone has to go. That someone is you. A well-dressed woman arrives in your village, speaking calmly about opportunity in the city. She meets with your parents while you play nearby, unaware that your future is being discussed in terms of money and obligation. She is an okasan, the head of an okiya, a geisha house, and she offers your parents an advance large enough to support the family for a time. The arrangement is straightforward and irreversible. You will move to the city, you will live in her house, you will train, and you will work until every cost, your training, clothing, housing, food and lessons, has been repaid. With interest. Your parents don't frame this as a permanent separation. They tell you it's an opportunity, a better life, a way to help the family. Your mother cries quietly. Your father avoids your eyes. They know the weight of the decision, even if they can't face it fully. You leave with the Okasan, travelling far beyond anything you've known. Somewhere along the journey, she tells you gently but firmly that childish things are behind you now. You don't fully understand what that means yet, but you soon will. The city is overwhelming. Crowded streets, unfamiliar smells, endless noise. You're tired, confused and anxious, but you learn quickly that complaints are not welcome. The okiya is elegant compared to your village home. Polished floors, careful decorations, order everywhere. For a brief moment, you feel hope. It doesn't last. The Okasan explains the rules clearly. This is your home now. You will work hard. Disobedience has consequences. Running away is not an option. Your family's well-being depends on your behavior. You nod. You're too young to fully grasp it, but you understand one thing clearly. Your life no longer belongs to you. The other girls barely acknowledge you. There's an unspoken hierarchy, and you are at the bottom. That night, you sleep on a thin futon in a shared room. No one speaks. Comfort is not offered. You cry quietly until sleep comes. This is your life now. Welcome to the Hanamachi. You are now a shikomi, the lowest rank in the geisha hierarchy. You are a servant, a trainee, and an investment. Your childhood is over. Chapter 2. Shikomi years, discipline without mercy. You wake before dawn. The house is already moving. You're expected to be faster. You're 8 now. Your days are long, repetitive, and exhausting. Cleaning, carrying, washing, preparing. Always under scrutiny. Mistakes are remembered. Perfection is demanded. Your hands are rough from constant work. Your knees ache from hours spent cleaning floors. You learn quickly that attention to detail isn't optional. It's survival. Meals come after everyone else has eaten. Lessons are rare and mostly observational. You are expected to absorb skills simply by watching while continuing to work. Errands take you through the district, carrying heavy loads and delivering messages. Adults speak to you with indifference or impatience. You learn to stay quiet, keep your eyes lowered, and move quickly. Occasionally, a dance or posture lesson is permitted. You are corrected constantly. How you stand, how you walk, how you hold yourself. Discipline is strict. Emotion is discouraged. You learn to endure without reacting. The evenings are busy. You help prepare the geisha for their appointments, watching them transform into the polished figures admired by outsiders. The contrast is striking and unsettling. You know this is what you're being shaped for. Sleep is scarce. Some nights you barely rest at all. Days blur together. There are no breaks, no weekends, no real sense of time passing. Only routine. Some girls can't endure it. One tries to run away and is brought back swiftly. Afterward, she becomes withdrawn, obedient and silent. The message is clear. Resistance leads nowhere. Illness is common. Exhaustion is constant. When someone disappears, life continues as if nothing happened. New girls arrive. The system does not pause. You begin to understand the core truth of this world. Individuality is a liability. Endurance is everything. By the time you reach your early teens, you move quietly, anticipate needs instinctively, and suppress discomfort without thinking. You have become what the system requires. The shikomi years can last many years. Promotion comes only when the Okasan decides you are ready, when you are sufficiently disciplined, compliant, and useful. You hope for the next stage, unaware that it will demand even more. Chapter 3. Becoming Minarai. Learning by watching and suffering. You're 14 years old when the Okasan finally announces you're ready to become a Minarai, a learning by observation apprentice. You should feel proud. Instead, you feel terrified. The Minarai stage means you'll start accompanying geisha to actual ozashiki, banquet parties where geisha entertain. You'll watch, learn, and begin participating in the real work. But first, you have to be transformed. Your head is shaved at the crown, not completely, but a large patch that will allow the elaborate hairstyles to be constructed. It hurts, and you're not allowed to cry. The first time a hairstylist yanks your hair into the traditional Nihongami style, you think your scalp is being ripped off. The style requires your hair to be pulled so tightly that your eyes water involuntarily. The benzuke wax used to hold everything in place smells rancid and feels like hot mud being smeared across your scalp. The hairstylist works, quickly and efficiently, her fingers moving with practiced precision. She doesn't care that tears are streaming down your face from the pain. She's styled hundreds of girls before you, and she'll style hundreds after. Your pain is irrelevant to her. You sleep on a takamakura, a wooden pillow designed to keep your hair perfect. It's not really a pillow. It's a small wooden stand that supports only your neck, leaving your head suspended. You cannot move in your sleep, or you'll destroy hours of hairstyling work and be punished. You learn to sleep frozen in place, and you wake up with neck pain that never fully goes away. The first night on the Takamakura is torture. You drift off from exhaustion, then jolt awake when your head starts to drop. You catch yourself, reposition, try again. This happens dozens of times. By morning, your neck is so stiff you can barely turn your head, and you look like you haven't slept at all. You'll get used to it, an older Minarai tells you. She's 15, has been sleeping on a Takamakura for a year, and her neck is permanently tilted slightly to one side. Your first kimono fitting is an ordeal. A formal geisha kimono weighs about 30 pounds with all the layers. The underrobe, the main kimono, the obi, the wide belt, which by itself can weigh 10 to 15 pounds, the various cords and accessories. You're a thin 14-year-old who weighs maybe 90 pounds soaking wet, and suddenly you're carrying a third of your body weight in clothing. The kimono is wrapped so tightly you can barely breathe. This is intentional. The constriction forces you to take small, shallow breaths and move in a controlled, graceful manner, because you literally can't make sudden movements. You feel like you're suffocating for the first few weeks until your body adjusts to functioning with reduced oxygen. The first time you're fully dressed, you panic. You genuinely can't breathe properly. Your vision starts to tunnel, and you think you might faint. The dresser slaps you, not hard, but sharp enough to snap you back to attention. Breathe slowly, she says. Small breaths. You'll adapt. She's right. You do adapt. Your body learns to function with less oxygen, but this adaptation comes at a cost. Your lung capacity is permanently reduced, and you'll struggle with breathlessness for the rest of your life. Your feet are bound into traditional zori or okobo, tall wooden sandals. The okobo are about 4 to 5 inches tall with a platform base. Walking in them requires a completely different gait, small, shuffling steps with your knees bent slightly. You practice walking in them for hours until your calves are on fire and your ankles are swollen. The first time you try to walk in okobo, you fall within 3 steps. The dresser doesn't help you up. Again, she says. You struggle to your feet, difficult when you're wrapped in 30 pounds of kimono, and try again. You fall again, and again. By the 20th attempt, you've figured out the basic mechanics, though you're far from graceful. Your ankles will be swollen and bruised for weeks as you learn this new way of moving. Now comes your first real lesson in the arts that define geisha, shamisen. You're finally allowed to hold the instrument. Your fingers are too soft, so the strings cut into them during your first practice session, until you're bleeding. You're not allowed to stop. You play until the teacher is satisfied, leaving blood smears on the strings that you'll clean off later. Over the weeks and months, your fingertips develop calluses so thick you could probably handle hot coals. You practice the same passage hundreds of times until it's perfect, then hundreds more times until it's effortless. The pain of those first weeks is indescribable. Every time you press down on a string, it's like pressing on a fresh cut. Your fingers throb constantly. At night, they swell and ache. But you keep practicing because stopping isn't an option. Dance, traditional Japanese dance, is nothing like modern dance. Every movement is precise, controlled, and weighted with meaning. The angle of your hand conveys emotion. The tilt of your head tells a story. You learn dozens of dances, each with hundreds of specific movements. Your teacher corrects you with sharp strikes of her fan against your arms, back, legs, wherever you've made an error. You dance the same routine 50 times in one session, and if you make a mistake on the 50th repetition, you start over from the beginning. The dance teacher is the strictest of all your instructors. She was trained the same way, beaten into perfection, and she sees no reason to be gentler with you. Pain is temporary, she says. Poor form is permanent. Which do you prefer? You don't answer, because it's a rhetorical question. You dance through the pain because that's what's expected. Tea ceremony. You learn the precise choreography of preparing and serving tea. Every movement is prescribed. How you fold the cloth, how you turn the bowl, how you whisk the tea. There are dozens of different procedures depending on the season, the occasion, the guests. One wrong movement, one incorrect angle, and you start the entire ceremony over. Your knees ache from kneeling in seiza position for hours at a time. The tea ceremony teacher is older, more patient than the dance teacher, but no less demanding. Tea ceremony is meditation in motion, she explains. Every action must be perfect because every action has meaning. There is no room for carelessness. You learn that making tea is not just making tea, it's a performance of harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. But achieving that tranquility requires hours of grueling practice that feels anything but tranquil. Conversation. This might be the hardest skill of all. You must learn to be entertaining without being forward, witty without being crude, attentive without being obsequious. You learn poetry, current events, proper Kyoto dialect, how to flatter men without seeming desperate, how to deflect inappropriate questions without giving offense. You practice conversations with older geisha who play the role of difficult clients, and they're intentionally cruel to prepare you for reality. A man asks you how old you are. Your conversation teacher says, "What do you say?" You think for a moment. I tell him my age? Wrong. Never give a direct answer to a personal question. You deflect with humour. Try again. You try various responses, and she rejects each one. Finally, after the 10th attempt, you say something that makes her smile slightly. Better. Not good, but better. Remember, you're not there to provide information. You're there to create an atmosphere of pleasant mystery. Music. Beyond shamisen, you learn to sing. Traditional Japanese singing uses a different vocal technique than you're used to. It's high-pitched, nasal, and requires control over vibrato and tone that takes years to master. Your throat hurts constantly as you develop the necessary muscles. The singing teacher makes you practice scales for hours, the same notes over and over until your throat is raw. Your voice is an instrument, she says. Like shamisen, it must be tuned and practiced. You sound terrible for months. The high-pitched nasally sound feels unnatural, forced, but gradually your voice adapts. You learn to produce sounds you didn't know were possible. Here's what a typical day looks like now. 5 a.m., wake up, though your neck is killing you from the wooden pillow. Check your hair. If anything has shifted, you're in trouble. 5:30 a.m. You still have cleaning duties because you're not a full geisha yet. Clean the okiya. 7 a.m. breakfast, then shamisen practice for 2 hours. Your fingers bleed through the calluses if you haven't practiced enough lately. 10 a.m. dance lesson for 3 hours. You dance until your legs shake and your kimono is soaked with sweat. 1 p.m. lunch, which you eat quickly because you only have 20 minutes. 1:30 p.m. tea ceremony practice or calligraphy or flower arranging, some other art form that geisha are expected to master. 3:30 p.m. conversation and etiquette training. You practice small talk, learn to pour sake at the correct angle, learn how to light a client's cigarette properly. 5 p.m. prepare for the evening. Your makeup takes an hour to apply, and at first you're terrible at it. The white makeup base is a mixture of rice powder, water, and nightingale droppings. Yes, bird feces, it's traditional. You paint it on your face and neck, leaving a deliberate unpainted line at your nape, considered erotic in Japanese aesthetics. Then you paint your eyebrows, add red to your lower lip and sometimes upper lip, and add subtle accents to your eyes. The first time you do your own makeup, you look like a ghost who fought with a cosmetics counter and lost. An older geisha laughs at you and makes you remove everything and start over. You do your makeup 7 times, before it's acceptable. The white makeup smells strange and feels heavy on your skin. It gets into your hairline and your ears if you're not careful. Your face feels stiff and mask-like under the layers of paste. 6 p.m, you're dressed in your formal kimono by experienced hands. The dressing process takes 30 to 40 minutes and involves multiple people pulling cords tight, wrapping the obi in complex patterns, and adjusting every layer until it's perfect. 7 p.m. You accompany your one-san, older sister Geisha who mentors you, to an ozashiki. You're terrified. The ozashiki is held at an ochaya, tea house, though that's a polite euphemism. It's really a party venue. You enter and immediately bow low, your nose nearly touching the tatami mats. Omatase itashimashita. Sorry to have kept you waiting, you say, even though you're exactly on time. It's a formality. The room is full of men, businessmen, politicians, wealthy merchants. They're already drunk or getting there. They look at you the way you've seen men look at food when they're hungry. Your one-san takes the lead. She's charming, witty, graceful. She pours sake, plays shamisen, leads the party games. You kneel in the corner and watch, trying to memorize everything. When your one-san signals, you pour sake for the guests, your hands shaking slightly. One man grabs your wrist as you pour. His hand is sweaty and his grip is too tight. "Such a pretty little Minarai," he says. "What's your name?" You've been trained for this. You smile demurely, gently extract your wrist without making it seem like a rejection, and tell him your geisha name, which was chosen by your oka-san. You had no say in it. "I'm still learning," you say modestly. "I hope you'll be patient with my poor skills." He laughs and lets you go. Your one-san catches your eye and gives you the slightest approving nod. You've passed your first test. The party continues for hours. You watch the men get progressively drunker. Some become maudlin, talking about their wives or children with tears in their eyes. Others boisterous, laughing too loud and making inappropriate jokes. Others sleepy, nodding off in corners. Your one-san handles all of them with perfect grace, and you try to learn. You pour sake until your arm aches from holding the heavy ceramic bottle at the proper angle. Your knees scream from kneeling in seiza position for 3 hours straight. You've lost all feeling in your feet. They've gone completely numb from the restricted blood flow. Finally, around 11 p.m, the party ends. You bow low again, thank the guests for their patronage, and leave with your one-san. 11:30 p.m, back at the okiya, you help your one-san remove her kimono and makeup. Then you remove your own, carefully storing everything properly. You wash the white makeup off your face, which takes forever because it's thick and sticky. Your skin is red and irritated underneath. 12:30 a.m. You fall onto your futon and sleep on the wooden pillow for 4 hours before it starts all over again. This is your life now, and it will continue every single day for the next several years until you're promoted to maiko if you're in Kyoto, or full geisha if you're in other districts. The Minarai period lasts about a month, but it's the most intense month of your life so far. You're being evaluated constantly. One major mistake and you'll be demoted back to shikomi, or worse, sold to a brothel, which is the unspoken threat that hangs over every young woman in the Hanamachi. You don't sleep enough. You don't eat enough. Your body is a constellation of pain, your scalp from the hairstyle, your neck from the pillow, your feet from the shoes, your knees from the kneeling, your hands from the shamisen, your entire being from the constant pressure to be perfect. But you endure, because what choice do you have? Chapter 4. Maiko, the most brutal years of your life. You've graduated to maiko, which sounds like an Achievement until you realize it just means the real exploitation can begin in earnest. If you're in Kyoto, you're now a maiko, an apprentice geisha, recognizable by your elaborate hanging obi, your distinctive makeup, and your gorgeous, incredibly expensive kimono that you absolutely do not own. If you're in Tokyo or another area, you might be called a hangyoku, and the details differ slightly, but the fundamental experience is the same. You are now the main attraction, and the financial burden on your shoulders has become crushing. Let's talk about debt, because this is where the system reveals its true nature. When you became a shikomi, the okiya paid your family in advance, maybe 200 to 500 ryo depending on the era and circumstances. That's the equivalent of several years' wages for a working-class family. That debt is in your name now, but that's just the beginning. Everything, and I mean everything, that goes into creating a maiko is added to your debt. Kimonos, a single formal. Maiko kimono can cost 1 million yen or more in modern currency, about $7,000 to $10,000. You need multiple kimonos for different seasons, different occasions, different levels of formality. The okiya owns them, but the cost is added to your debt. You personally owe about 10 to 15 million yen in kimono costs alone. Each kimono is a work of art, hand-painted silk, elaborate embroidery, patterns that took artisans months to create. They're beautiful. They're also chains around your neck, adding to a debt you'll never be able to repay at the rate you're allowed to keep your earnings. Obi and accessories. The elaborate hanging obi costs another few 100,000 yen. The hair ornaments, kanzashi, are changed monthly and can cost 50,000 to 200,000 yen per set. The special shoes, the bags, the fans, all of it adds up to millions more yen. You have 12 sets of kanzashi, one for each month, because the flowers and decorations must match the season. Each set is exquisite. Each set is another. Anchor dragging you deeper into debt. Lessons. Every single lesson you've taken for years, shamisen, dance, tea ceremony, conversation, has been tracked. Each lesson costs money, and you owe it all. We're talking another several million yen. The okiya has kept meticulous records. Every hour with every teacher documented and added to your ledger. The numbers are staggering when you finally see them written out. Room and board. Every meal you've eaten, every night you've slept in the okiya, every bath you've taken, it's all been recorded and added to your debt with interest. You try to calculate once how much you've accumulated just in rice costs over 8 years. The number makes you sick. Medical expenses. Got sick? Saw a doctor? That's on your tab. When you had pneumonia at age 12, the doctor's fees and medicine costs were added to your debt. You spent 3 days delirious with fever, and all you could think about was how much each day was costing you. By the time you debut, as a maiko, you might owe the equivalent of 30 to 50 million yen in today's money, roughly $200,000 to $350,000. You are 15 or 16 years old, and you owe more money than most people make in a lifetime. Here's how you pay it back. You work. Every single party you attend, the client pays a fee. The ochaya, tea house, takes a cut. The okiya takes most of what's left. You get a tiny percentage, maybe 10 to 20% of the fee. And before you see any of that money, it's applied to your debt. Do the math. If you owe 30 million yen, and you're making maybe 100,000 yen per month after the okiya takes its cut, you'll be working for 300 months. That's 25 years, just to break even. And that's not accounting for ongoing expenses or the interest that keeps compounding. The system is designed to keep you trapped. The more elaborate your kimono, the more prestigious your appointments, the more you earn. But the more you owe for the increasingly expensive clothing and accessories required to maintain that level of prestige. Now let's talk about your daily reality as a maiko. Your appearance, you are a living doll. every single element of your appearance is calculated for maximum visual impact. Your face is painted white with a crimson lower lip. Your eyebrows are subtly darkened. The exposed nape of your neck, considered the most erotic part of a woman in traditional Japanese aesthetics, is left unpainted in a deliberate W or M shape that takes skill to achieve. Your kimono is impossibly elegant, silk in vibrant colours with elaborate patterns, the long sleeves swaying with every movement. Your hanging obi trails behind you like a work of art. Your hair is your own, unlike full geisha who often wear wigs, styled in elaborate shapes decorated with seasonal kanzashi that cost more than a month's wages for a regular person. You look stunning. You also can't breathe properly, can't eat a full meal, can't scratch an itch, can't relax for a single moment. Your schedule: you wake at 6 a.m. for lessons, dance practice from 6 to 9 a.m., during which you perfect the same movements you've done 1,000 times, because perfection requires 10,000 repetitions. Shamisen practice from 9 to 12. Tea ceremony or other arts from 12 to 2 p.m., with maybe a 20-minute lunch break where you eat tiny portions because you need to maintain a specific body size. The kimono won't fit if you gain even a few pounds, and new kimonos cost money you don't have. From 3 to 5 p.m, you prepare for the evening. Bath, hairstyling, makeup, dressing. The makeup alone takes 60 to 90 minutes. Your face must be absolutely perfect, because you are the visual centerpiece of every party you attend. From 6 p.m. until 1 or 2 a.m, you work, party after party, pouring sake, playing shamisen, dancing, making conversation, laughing at jokes that aren't funny, deflecting wandering hands, maintaining perfect grace. The parties. Here's what people don't tell you about ozashiki. They're exhausting and often degrading. You arrive at the ochaya, bow deeply, and enter the party room where the clients are waiting. Usually it's businessmen entertaining clients or celebrating a deal. Sometimes it's politicians, occasionally it's gangsters, yakuza who've made enough money to afford geisha entertainment. Your job is to create an atmosphere of refined pleasure. You pour sake using a specific technique that makes it look effortless. You initiate party games like Tora Tora, a drinking game, always letting the guest win just enough to keep them engaged. You play shamisen while an older geisha sings. You might perform a dance if requested. You laugh at bad jokes. You deflect personal questions with wit. You make each man feel like he's the most interesting person in the room. And you do all of this while men who are often drunk get increasingly forward, a hand on your knee. "You're so lovely. How old are you?" A man trying to pull you into his lap. "Come sit with me properly, sweetheart." Someone asking if you offer extra services, using euphemisms but making the meaning clear. Your training kicks in. You deflect without offending. You extract yourself without making it seem like rejection. You smile and pour more sake and change the subject. The ochaya has strict rules. Geisha are not prostitutes, and sex is not part of the service. But the clients don't always care about the rules, and you need to navigate their expectations without losing their patronage, which would anger the okiya, or compromising yourself, which would destroy your reputation. Sometimes a senior geisha or the ochaya staff intervenes if a client gets too aggressive. Sometimes you just have to endure and be skillful enough to redirect the energy. Not every party is bad. Some clients are genuinely interested in the arts. Some are respectful. Some become regular patrons who specifically request you because they enjoy your shamisen playing or your conversation. These clients are treasured because they're rare. But many parties are just drunk men treating you like a beautiful object they've rented for the evening. One night stands out in your memory. You were 17, and a client, a man in his 50s, kept insisting you sit next to him. He was drunk, aggressive, kept putting his hand on your thigh despite your polite redirections. Finally, you had to stand up to pour sake for another guest, just to physically remove yourself from his reach. He grabbed your wrist hard enough to bruise. "I paid good money for this," he slurred. "You should be nicer to me." The Ochaya owner intervened, smoothly separating you from the client and having another geisha take over your duties in that room. But the bruises on your wrist lasted for a week, and every time you saw them, you felt a complicated mix of anger, shame, and helplessness. The physical toll. Your body is breaking down. You're 17 now, and you have chronic neck and back pain from the hairstyles, and wooden pillow damaged knees from kneeling for hours daily, foot problems from the traditional shoes, digestive issues from eating so little and at irregular hours, chronic exhaustion from sleeping 4 to 5 hours per night, skin problems from the heavy makeup, hearing damage from years of loud parties, emotional numbness that you're not even aware of because you've never known anything else. You have no friends outside the Hanamachi. You have no money of your own. You haven't seen your family in over a decade. You have no legal rights. If you tried to leave, the Okiya could have you arrested for theft of the kimono, the ornaments, etc., or sue your family for the debt. You are utterly trapped in a beautiful cage. The hope and the horror. Here's the twisted thing. You might actually be happy. Sometimes there are moments of genuine beauty when you perform a perfect dance and feel the aesthetic power of the movement, when you play a difficult shamisen passage flawlessly, when you make a whole room laugh with a well-timed joke, when a client praises your artistic skill and means it, when the other geisha and maiko in your okiya have rare moments of camaraderie. One evening, after a particularly successful performance, an older geisha named Sayuri pulled you aside. "You were exceptional tonight," she said. "Your dance was truly moving." She handed you a small sweet she'd saved from dinner. It was such a tiny gesture, but it made you cry later when you were alone, because kindness is so rare in this world that even crumbs of it feel overwhelming. You've been so thoroughly conditioned that you take pride in your suffering. You've internalized the values of the system: discipline, perfection, aesthetic beauty, graceful endurance. You look down on ordinary women who don't understand the refined world you inhabit. This is Stockholm Syndrome wearing a silk kimono, but you don't have the framework to recognize it. The maiko period lasts about 5 years, from age 15 or 16 until you're about 20 or 21. These are the years when you earn the most money for the okiya, because you're exotic, youthful, and visually spectacular. You are being exploited at your maximum earning potential. And then, if you survive, you become a full geisha, which brings a whole new set of complications. Chapter 5. Erike, turning your collar and losing your youth. The Erike ceremony marks your transition from maiko to geiko, full geisha in Kyoto dialect. It's supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it feels like graduating from one form of servitude to another. You're about 20 or 21 years old. The ceremony involves changing your collar from the red collar of a maiko to the white collar of a geiko. There's symbolism here about purity and adulthood. That would be meaningful if you had any choice in the matter. The visual transformation is dramatic. Hair. You no longer style your own hair in elaborate shapes. Instead, you wear a wig, katsura, for formal occasions. This should be a relief. No more sleeping on a wooden pillow every night. But the wigs are heavy, hot, and give you different headaches instead. The first time you wear a wig, you're shocked by the weight. It feels like someone placed a 5-pound weight on your head. The wig sits tightly against your scalp, held in place by pins that dig into your head. After a few hours, you have a pounding headache that no amount of medicine can fully relieve. Makeup. Your makeup becomes slightly less elaborate. You still paint your face white, but the application is less time-consuming. Small mercies. Kimono. Your kimonos become more subdued, still expensive and beautiful, but with shorter sleeves and less vibrant patterns. You're supposed to embody elegant maturity now instead of youthful exuberance. The hanging obi is replaced with a more standard obi tied in a simpler style. Here's the cruel reality of becoming a geiko. Your earning power just dropped significantly. As a maiko, you were exotic and rare. Clients specifically requested maiko because of the elaborate aesthetics and the cash of entertaining with a young apprentice. As a geiko, you're more common. Your fees are lower. The okiya makes less money from you, but your debt, still enormous. You've been working for 5 years, but between ongoing expenses and compounding interest, you might still owe 20 to 30 million yen. So your workload increases, you're expected to attend more parties, serve more clients, work longer hours, and now you're also expected to take on additional responsibilities. Teaching. You might start teaching younger maiko and minarai. You're passing on the same brutal training you endured, becoming complicit in the system that trapped you. It's a strange kind of power. You finally have authority over someone, but only within a hierarchy that oppresses all of you. The first time you correct a young minarai with the same stick that was used on you, you feel something break inside. You're perpetuating the cycle. You know it's wrong, but what choice do you have? This is the only world you know. Attracting patrons. As a geiko, you're expected to cultivate dana relationships. A dana is a wealthy patron who essentially sponsors you, paying your expenses, covering your debts, supporting your career. In exchange, he has exclusive access to your time and, usually, your body. Let's be very clear about what this means. You exchange sexual exclusivity for financial security. The arrangement is formalized through contracts and negotiations between your okasan and the potential dana. You have some input, but realistically, if a wealthy man wants to be your dana and can afford it, you can't refuse without serious consequences. The dana relationship is not marriage. It's not even necessarily romantic. It's a business arrangement where you trade your autonomy for a reduction in debt and an increase in security. Your dana might be kind, he might be cruel, he might be old enough to be your grandfather. He might have a wife and children who pretend not to know about you. You perform intimacy, emotional and physical, with someone you might not even like, because refusing would mean staying in debt forever, or being demoted or expelled from the okiya, which would leave you destitute with no marketable skills outside the geisha world. Some geiko have multiple dana over their careers as circumstances change. Some find a dana who genuinely cares for them and develop something like love. Some endure decades with a dana they despise because the financial security is better than the alternatives. Your first dana is a businessman named Tanaka. He's 48 years old, married with 3 children. He's not physically attractive to you, but he's not cruel either. He's simply there, a fixture in your life that you must accommodate. The arrangement is negotiated by Okasan without much input from you. You meet him for dinner, he expresses interest, money changes hands, and suddenly he owns exclusive access to you. Your daily life now. You wake up at 8 a.m. instead of 6 a.m., a luxury compared to your maiko years. You still have dance and shamisen practice, but only a few hours per day instead of all morning. You spend your afternoons preparing for evening parties, sometimes taking care of administrative work for the okiya, sometimes just resting because your body needs it after years of abuse. Your evenings are still filled with ozashiki, but you're the senior geisha now. You led the entertainment. You mentor the maiko who are present. You handle difficult clients with a combination of skill and weariness. You're expected to be witty but not sharp, entertaining but not exhausting, beautiful but not threatening to the wives who know. Their husbands are spending money on you. It's a constant performance. Between parties, you might attend cultural events, kabuki theatre, traditional music performances, exhibitions, both because you need to stay current to maintain interesting conversation, and because these events are where potential clients and Dana might be found. The toll of experience. You're 25 now, and you've spent almost 20 years in this world. You know things you wish you didn't. Which clients tip well and which are cheap. Which ones are respectful and which will get handsy if given the chance. How to smile while a man twice your age makes inappropriate comments. How to deflect questions about whether you have a Dana without admitting vulnerability or lying. How to navigate the complicated social hierarchy of the hanamachi, where every geisha is simultaneously your colleague and your competition. You know how to drink just enough to be sociable without getting drunk, because drunk geisha make mistakes, and mistakes cost money. You know how to eat almost nothing while making it look like you're eating normally. You know how to go to the bathroom in a kimono tied so tightly that you need help undressing. You know which ochaya have bathrooms that lock and which ones don't. Which matters when you need a moment alone to cry or just breathe without performing. You've developed a professional persona so complete that you sometimes forget what your real self feels like. Are you actually witty and charming, or is that just the character you play? Do you enjoy shamisen, or have you just played it so long that you're good at it? Would you choose any of this if you'd actually had a choice? You don't think about these questions too much because the answers are depressing. The best case scenario. If you're very lucky and very skilled, you can achieve some level of independence by your 30s. You might pay off your debt to the okiya. Finally, establish yourself as a respected geiko with a reliable roster of clients. Have a Dana who treats you well and provides financial stability. Perhaps save enough to eventually become independent or even open your own okiya someday. This is the dream. This is what you've been working toward for 25 years. But most geiko never achieve full independence. They work into their 40s or 50s, still partially dependent on their okiya, still performing at ozashiki, their artistic skills refined to perfection, but their bodies worn down from decades of strain. The worst case scenario. Your looks fade, your artistic skills plateau. Clients stop requesting you specifically. The okiya sees you as less profitable and starts giving preference to younger geiko and maiko. Your Dana drops you for a younger geisha. You're 40 years old with no savings, no skills outside this world, no family ties. You've been gone for 35 years. Your parents are probably dead, and any siblings have their own lives, and no prospects. Some women in this situation become teachers, passing on their skills to the next generation. Some become okasan themselves, perpetuating the system that trapped them. Some simply disappear from the hanamachi, and no one asks where they went or what happened to them. This is the reality that awaits most geisha. Decades of service, absolute mastery of arts that the modern world barely values, and an old age spent either training new victims or dying in poverty. But you're not thinking about that now. You're 25, you're still beautiful, you're skilled, and you've survived this long. You keep going, because what else would you do? Chapter 6. The arts you've mastered and what they cost you. Let's talk about what you've actually learned in all those years of brutal training, because the artistic skills of a geisha are genuinely impressive, and the cost of acquiring them is horrific. Shamisen, you are now a master of this 3-stringed instrument. You can play hundreds of traditional pieces from memory. Your fingers move across the strings and frets with absolute precision, producing sounds from delicate whispers to dramatic strikes. What it cost. Your fingertips are so calloused they've lost most sensation. You have permanent nerve damage in your right hand from decades of striking the strings with a bachi, plectrum. You sometimes can't sleep because your hand cramps unexpectedly. You've played through bleeding fingers, broken nails and swollen joints so many times that you barely register the pain anymore. The shamisen weighs about 4 pounds. You've held it in playing position for thousands of hours over your life. Your right shoulder sits slightly lower than your left from the constant weight and muscle development. You have a permanent indent in your left collarbone where the instrument rests. Sometimes, when you play now, you don't feel the strings at all. Your fingers move on memory and muscle memory alone, because the nerves have been damaged beyond repair. Dance. You are a master of traditional Japanese dance forms, Nihon Buyo. You can perform dozens of complete dances, each telling a story through precise movements. Every angle of your hand conveys emotion. Every tilt of your head tells a story. You learn dozens of dances, each with hundreds of specific movements. What it cost? Your knees are destroyed. You've knelt in seiza position for probably 20,000 plus hours over your life. The cartilage is worn down. Your knees crack audibly when you stand. You'll have severe arthritis by your 40s, crippling arthritis by your 50s. Your feet are deformed from years of wearing traditional footwear that force them into unnatural positions. Your arches have collapsed. You have bunions and hammer toes. Walking in normal shoes is actually uncomfortable now. Your feet have adapted to the traditional shape. Your spine has micro-compressions from years of maintaining the slightly forward-leaning posture required for dance. You're half an inch shorter than you should be. Your lower back pain is constant. You take opium-laced pain medicine sometimes, just to get through performances. The medicine helps, but you know you're developing a dependency. You don't have a choice. You can't perform if you can't move. Tea ceremony. You can perform multiple schools of tea ceremony with absolute precision. You know the appropriate ceremony for every season, every occasion, every guest combination. Your movements are meditative, each gesture perfect. What it cost? More knee damage, more back pain. The repetitive strain of whisking matcha tea thousands of times has given you tendinitis in your wrists that flares up unpredictably. The constant kneeling, standing, kneeling, has made your hip flexors so tight that you have difficulty standing up straight after prolonged sitting. Conversation. You are a master conversationalist. You can talk intelligently about poetry, current events, business, art, music, philosophy. You can read a room instantly, understand what topics will engage which guests, steer conversation away from dangerous topics, diffuse tension with humour, make everyone feel clever and interesting. What it cost? You've completely lost the ability to express authentic opinions in social situations. You automatically calculate the correct response to everything instead of speaking from genuine feeling. You can't remember the last time you said what you actually thought instead of what would be most pleasing or most strategic. You've listened to tens of thousands of hours of men talking, complaining about their wives, bragging about business deals, repeating the same stories, making the same tired jokes. You've smiled and laughed appropriately at all of it. The emotional labour of this constant performance has created a dissociative barrier between your inner self and your social self that may be permanent. Music. Beyond shamisen, you can sing traditional Japanese, songs in the appropriate style. You know hundreds of songs. Your voice has the characteristic high, controlled vibrato that's required. What it cost? You've damaged your vocal cords from years of singing in a register that's unnatural for your voice. You sometimes lose your voice completely for days after a particularly busy period. You have chronic throat irritation. In your normal speaking voice, you sometimes sound hoarse. Calligraphy. Your calligraphy is exquisite. You can write in multiple historical styles. Your characters are balanced, flowing, aesthetically perfect. What it cost? You have repetitive strain injuries in your writing hand. Your thumb joint has developed arthritis from the specific grip required. Your neck has chronic tension from hunching over calligraphy work for hours. Flower arranging. You create ikebana arrangements that embody the aesthetic principles of the art form: asymmetry, space, harmony, the beauty of imperfection. What it cost. Your hands have dozens of scars from thorns and sharp stems. You've developed contact dermatitis from certain plants. The seasonal pressure to create perfect arrangements for the okiya and for special occasions has given you stress-related migraines. Kimono dressing. You can dress yourself in formal kimono in about 20 minutes if necessary, though it's usually done by specialists. You know the appropriate kimono for every occasion, every season, every social context. You understand the language of patterns and colours. What it cost. You can't wear Western clothing without feeling exposed and uncomfortable. Your body has adapted to the constriction of kimono. You actually feel anxious when you can breathe fully and move freely. The few times you've tried wearing regular clothes, you felt like you were walking around naked. Games. You're an expert at traditional party games. Tora Tora, Tiger Tiger, Kompira Funa Funa, a hand-slapping game, and various drinking games that keep ozashiki entertaining. What it cost. You've played these games tens of thousands of times. You could do them in your sleep. The automatic smile you paste on while initiating the 15th round of Tora Tora with drunk businessmen is the smile of someone whose soul has left their body. Here's what people don't understand about these arts. Yes, they're beautiful. Yes, they represent centuries of cultural refinement. Yes, the level of skill is genuinely impressive. But you didn't choose to learn them. You were forced to master them through a combination of physical punishment, financial bondage, and psychological conditioning. The beauty of the art is inseparable from the brutality of the training. When you perform a dance, observers see elegance and grace. You feel your knees screaming and remember the stick that struck your shoulders when you made mistakes during practice. When you play shamisen, observers hear beautiful music. You feel the phantom pain of bleeding fingers and remember crying silently while practicing the same passage for the 100th time. When you perform tea ceremony, observers appreciate the meditative calm. You feel the deep ache in your lower back and remember being punished for using the wrong angle when turning the tea bowl. The arts haven't enriched your life. They've consumed it. You have no hobbies outside these skills because you've never had time for anything else. You have no identity outside being a geisha because you've been in this world since you were 6 years old. You are a living repository of traditional Japanese culture, a master artist, a living work of art yourself, and you are utterly, completely trapped by that mastery. Chapter 7. The Unspoken Realities: Intimacy, Power, and Survival. We need to talk about the parts of geisha life that are often glossed over in polite discussion and heavily romanticized in Western imagination. First, the phrase you hear constantly: geisha are not prostitutes. Technically, legally and historically this is true. Geisha were distinct from yujo, licensed courtesans who worked in designated pleasure quarters. The distinction mattered socially and culturally, but the lived reality was far more complicated. For many geisha, a significant personal milestone was arranged in their mid to late teenage years through a ceremony known as mizuage. This event marked the formal transition into full professional adulthood within the geisha world. The process worked like this. The okasan would arrange a wealthy patron who paid a substantial sum for the honor of sponsoring this transition. The money went to the okiya and reduced the geisha's accumulated debt. On paper, participation was considered consensual. In reality, the choice existed within a system that had shaped obedience from early childhood. Debt, obligation, and lack of alternatives meant that refusal was rarely realistic. The decision was presented as inevitable, framed as tradition and advancement rather than personal choice. The event itself was treated as a formal rite of passage. The patron might later become a long-term supporter, known as a dana, or might disappear from your life entirely. Some women later described these experiences as manageable or neutral. Others carried emotional scars for decades. It was not something openly discussed, despite being widely understood within the Hanamachi. Afterward, life simply continued. Tea was served. Congratulations were offered. You were now considered fully established, your role within the system complete. From that point on, the dana system became central. Having a dana meant entering a private, long-term arrangement that everyone understood, even if it was never publicly acknowledged. These relationships varied widely, but they typically involved exclusivity, companionship, and availability within agreed boundaries. In exchange, the dana provided financial support, monthly payments to the okiya, assistance with debt, and coverage of costly kimono and professional expenses. For some geisha, this offered stability. For others, it was another layer of dependency. Some patrons developed genuine affection. Some treated the relationship as a status symbol. Many were married men, and the imbalance of power was always present. You learned to manage expectations, emotions, and appearances with precision. Grace was not optional, it was required. Personal discomfort was not expressed. Desire was performed when expected. Boundaries were negotiated, but only within narrow limits. This wasn't romance. It was a long-term transaction wrapped in refinement and tradition. Power dynamics, the geisha world, functioned through rigid hierarchy. At the top were wealthy patrons and influential supporters. Below them were okasan and senior geiko, who controlled access, money, and opportunity. Established geiko held some independence but still answered to the system. New geiko and maiko remained deeply indebted. At the bottom were shikomi, with no agency at all. You navigated this structure constantly, deference upward, authority downward, competition sideways. Rivalry between geisha was intense but masked by perfect politeness. Clients drifted, favor shifted, reputation mattered more than truth, information became currency, alliances formed and dissolved quietly, smiles concealed calculation, the stakes were survival. This was court politics, played out in tea houses instead of palaces. Aging out. As you moved into your 30s and 40s, the balance changed. Your skills were sharper than ever, your conversation effortless, your understanding of people precise, but youth, so prized by many clients, was gone. Some patrons preferred maturity and experience. These became your core supporters. Others sought novelty elsewhere. Requests declined, fees softened. The okiya invested more heavily in younger women. With a loyal dana, this transition was manageable. Without one, it was frightening. You watched younger geisha step into roles you once held. You helped them prepare, smiled encouragingly, and privately worried about your future. A few women transitioned into teaching or management. Some became okasan themselves. This required resources, connections, and approval, things most never fully achieved. Leaving the world. If you chose to leave in middle age, options were limited. Your skills were highly specialized and poorly transferable. Formal education was minimal. Savings were scarce. Family ties were distant or gone. Marriage was theoretically possible, but stigma followed you beyond the Hanamachi. Many former geisha found themselves in modest service work. Some struggled significantly. The system was not designed to release you gently. It was designed to extract value until there was none left. moments of light. Despite everything, moments of humanity existed. Deep friendships formed between women who understood one another completely. Support was quiet but real. Art still mattered. A flawless dance. The sound of shamisen in a quiet room. Tea shared in rare, unguarded moments. These moments didn't dismantle the system, but they made it survivable. Chapter 8. A day in your life at 40. The bitter middle years. You're 43 years old. You've spent nearly 4 decades in the geisha world. You wake in a small room you occupy through seniority rather than ownership. Everything you possess fits within it. Your body aches, but the pain feels ordinary now. A long-term patron passed away years ago. You grieved privately. Life moved on. You prepare breakfast with younger residents of the Okia. You take modest portions, maintaining harmony through restraint. A young maiko asks for guidance with her practice. You agree, aware that you're passing on a tradition that demanded everything from you. Later, you teach shamisen to a wealthy student seeking cultural enrichment. She struggles. She laughs at mistakes. You guide her patiently, knowing she can step away from this world whenever she chooses. The lesson pays modestly, but independence matters now more than prestige. You practice dance alone, not for performance, but to remain relevant. Your body protests. You continue anyway. A misstep reminds you that decline is inevitable. You finish the routine, then sit quietly, letting the reality settle in. This is the long middle stretch of geisha life. No longer rising, not yet finished, just enduring. 1 p.m. Lunch, then administrative work. You help Okasan with bookkeeping, tracking expenses, managing schedules for the younger geisha and maiko. You've become valuable in this role because you're literate, numerate, and understand the business from the inside. This is your potential path to eventual Okasan status, if you can save enough money and if the current Okasan favors you when she retires. 3 p.m. Preparation for the evening. You bathe, do your makeup, a process that's become so automatic you could do it blindfolded, and are dressed by one of the younger women. Your kimono today is elegant but subdued, deep blue with a subtle pattern. You're past the age for vibrant colours. The young geiko dressing you pulls the obi tight. Not so tight, you say. I need to breathe. She looks surprised. Geiko are supposed to endure the constriction without complaint. But you're too old and too senior to care about impressing anyone with your suffering anymore. 6 p.m. You arrive at your first ozashiki of the evening. It's a regular client, a group of executives from a pharmaceutical company who've been coming to this ochaya for years. They specifically request you because they appreciate your conversation about literature and current events. This is the best type of engagement. You pour sake, play shamisen, lead a few party games, and spend most of the time in genuine conversation about a new biography of a Meiji-era politician. The men are respectful. No one gets too drunk. No one touches you inappropriately. You're paid well for this. 30,000 yen for 2 hours, of which you'll see about 40% after the ochaya and okiya take their cuts. Still, it's decent money for a pleasant evening. 8:30 p.m. Your second engagement is less pleasant. It's a young client, maybe 30, who's made a lot of money in tech startups. He has friends with him, and they're already drunk when you arrive. Finally, some entertainment, the client says too loudly. I heard you're one of the best. Prove it. You smile your professional smile. You pour sake. You initiate party games that let them feel clever when they win. You deflect increasingly personal questions about your age, whether you have a boyfriend, whether you'd consider meeting outside of the professional context. One of the friends puts his hand on your knee while you're pouring his sake. You shift position gracefully, removing his hand without making it seem like a rejection. Oh, you're good, he says, laughing. You're so tired, but you smile and laugh and continue the performance. At one point, the main client leans close and says, "You must have been really beautiful when you were younger." It's not meant as an insult, but it lands like one. You deflect with a joke about aging gracefully and everyone laughs, but inside, you feel something shrivel. 11 p.m. Back at the Okiya, you help the young geiko who attended the second party with you remove her kimono and makeup. "How do you handle clients like that?" she asks. "Practice," you say. You learn to redirect without rejecting. You learn to be pleasant when you want to scream. It gets easier. This is a lie. It never gets easier. You just get more numb. 11:30 p.m. You remove your own makeup, the white paste coming off in smears that reveal your 43-year-old face. The makeup hides a lot. The lines around your eyes, the slight sagging of your jawline, the age spots starting to form. Without makeup, you look tired. You look your age. You look like someone who's been performing for 37 years and is running out of energy for the show. 12 a.m. You sit in your room with a cup of tea, the television playing quietly. This is your time, the only hour of the day that belongs entirely to you. You think about your life. You've achieved a certain level of success. You're a respected geiko. You have regular clients. You're valued at your Okiya. You've mastered arts that take a lifetime to learn, but you're also aware that you're approaching the end game, another 10 years, maybe 15 if you're lucky, and you'll be too old for regular ozashiki work. You need to transition into teaching or management, but that requires more capital than you have. You've started saving aggressively, but after the Okiya takes its cut and you pay for basic living expenses, you're only putting away about 50,000 yen per month. You have about 2 million yen saved, not nearly enough to open your own Okiya or even to retire. You try not to think about what happens if you can't transition successfully. You try not to think about the former geisha you've heard about who ended up cleaning houses or worse. 1 a.m. You sleep on a normal pillow now, one of the few concessions to age. Your body needs actual rest. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. And the day after that. And the day after that. This is your life at 43. Still beautiful in the right light and makeup. Still skilled. Still performing. But increasingly aware that the system that shaped you has no use for you once you're too old to be profitable. You've survived longer than many. You should be proud. But mostly, you're just tired. Chapter 9. What modern people get wrong about geisha. Let's demolish some myths, because the Western imagination has absolutely destroyed any realistic understanding of what geisha life actually meant. Myth 1. Geisha were empowered women choosing artistic careers. Reality. The vast majority of geisha were sold into the profession as children by desperate families. They had no choice. The choice to continue as adults was manufactured by debt bondage. By the time you're old enough to theoretically leave, you owe so much money that leaving would mean destitution and potentially legal prosecution. Yes, some women chose to become geisha later in life, usually women from the entertainment world who saw it as a step up, but the majority were trafficked children who were broken down and rebuilt into performers. Calling this empowerment is like calling indentured servitude a job training program. Myth 2. The geisha world was about art, not sex. Reality. While geisha were technically not prostitutes, the sex was always part of the equation. Mid-wage ceremonies sold virginity. Dana relationships required sexual availability. Even without formal Dana arrangements, there was enormous pressure to provide sexual services to maintain client relationships. The art was real, the shamisen skills, the dance, the conversation, but it existed within a framework of sexual commodification. You can't separate the artistic elements from the sexual economy that funded them. Myth 3. Geisha had power and influence over powerful men. Reality. You had the appearance of influence. You entertained powerful men. You heard their secrets. You provided counsel that they sometimes followed. But you couldn't vote. You couldn't own property in your own name. You couldn't leave your okiya without permission. You couldn't refuse clients or a dana. You couldn't marry without giving up your profession. You had no legal rights to your own earnings. That's not power. That's the illusion of power granted to you as long as you stayed within the rigid boundaries of your role. Some individual geisha leveraged their positions skillfully and achieved real influence, but the system itself was designed to extract their labor and sexuality while giving them minimal autonomy. Myth 4. The training was rigorous but rewarding. Reality. The training was abusive. You were beaten, starved, sleep-deprived, and psychologically manipulated from childhood. The skills you learned are real and impressive, but they were beaten into you. The reward was being able to perform those skills in a profession you were trapped in. That's not rewarding. That's Stockholm Syndrome. Myth 5. Geisha preserved traditional Japanese culture. Reality. Geisha did preserve traditional arts, shamisen, dance, tea, ceremony, conversation styles, aesthetic principles. This preservation is real and culturally valuable, but it came at the cost of thousands of women's lives, childhoods, health, and autonomy. When we celebrate the cultural preservation, we need to simultaneously acknowledge the human cost. It's possible to appreciate the art while condemning the system that produced it. Myth 6. The geisha world was glamorous. Reality. You wore beautiful kimono that you didn't own while your body slowly broke down from the physical demands. You attended elegant parties where you smiled while drunk men groped you. You lived in beautiful okiya that were essentially prisons. You mastered sophisticated arts while having no control over your own life. Glamour is the illusion you created for clients. Your actual life was exhaustion, pain, financial exploitation, and constant performance. Myth 7. Geisha were like Japanese geishas in Memoirs of a Geisha. Reality. Memoirs of a Geisha is a novel written by a white American man based on interviews with a geisha who later said he misrepresented much of what she told her. It romanticizes, orientalizes, and fundamentally misrepresents the geisha experience. Real geisha life was less artistic coming-of-age story, and more, watch a child be systematically broken down and rebuilt into a performer through decades of exploitation. The novel and movie are to real geisha life what a Disney princess movie is to actual medieval European feudalism. Myth 8. The geisha system was just how things were back then. Reality. Yes, it was a product of its time and culture, but even within historical context, it was exploitative. Contemporaneous sources include criticism of the system, accounts of geisha attempting to escape, documentation of the abuses. Just because something was culturally normalized doesn't mean it wasn't harmful. We can understand historical context while still recognizing exploitation. What modern people should understand, geisha were, and the few remaining geisha are, real women navigating an incredibly restrictive system. Some found genuine fulfillment in the arts. Some developed real relationships with clients or dana. Some achieved a degree of independence and even prosperity. But these outcomes don't erase the fundamental exploitation of the system. Children sold into servitude, debt bondage, sexual commodification, brutal training methods, lack of autonomy. The geisha who succeeded within the system showed incredible resilience, creativity, and strength. But they shouldn't have had to. When you see a photo of a beautifully dressed geisha, you're seeing the end product of a system that consumed decades of someone's life and gave them limited alternatives. The beauty is real. The skill is real. the suffering that produced both is also real. You can't understand geisha culture by focusing only on the aesthetic elements while ignoring the human cost. The art and the exploitation are inseparable. The modern survivor, there are still geisha working today, primarily in Kyoto's Gion district. The system has reformed somewhat. Girls aren't sold by families anymore. Physical abuse is less common. There are more legal protections. But the fundamental structure remains. Years of intensive training, elaborate performances, entertaining wealthy men, navigating complex social hierarchies, maintaining traditional arts in a modern world that values them less and less. The modern geisha faces different challenges: declining interest in traditional entertainment, competition from modern entertainment options, changing social norms around gender and sexuality. But she's still performing a role that requires her to subsume her individual identity into a collective artistic tradition, still navigating the expectations of male clients, still bound by elaborate rules of behavior and appearance. The cage is prettier now. It's still a cage. Conclusion. The beautiful lie you die, maintaining you thought you wanted to be a geisha. Now you know what it actually means. Sold at 6, broken down as a servant for years, trained through pain until art and suffering become identical. Your virginity sold to the highest bidder. Your young adulthood spent entertaining drunk men while wearing beautiful kimono you don't own. Your middle age watching younger women take your place while you scramble for financial security. Your old age hoping you've accumulated enough value to the system to avoid destitution. You master arts that take a lifetime to learn. You become fluent in beauty, grace, and aesthetic perfection. You preserve cultural traditions that are genuinely valuable, and you pay for it with your childhood, your health, your autonomy, your chance at a life outside a rigidly defined role. The geisha world operated on a beautiful lie that the art justified the exploitation, that the beauty of the performance made up for the brutality of the training, that preserving tradition was worth sacrificing thousands of individual women's lives and futures. Some geisha believed the lie. They took pride in their suffering, found meaning in their art, identified so completely with the role that they couldn't imagine being anything else. Some geisha saw through it, but had no choice but to keep performing because the system left them no escape routes. Most probably existed somewhere in between, appreciating genuine moments of beauty and connection, while also recognizing the fundamental exploitation, taking pride in their skills while resenting the cost of acquiring them, finding ways to survive psychologically while acknowledging the harm. Here's what you need to understand. You wouldn't survive as a geisha, not just because you lack the skills, though you do, not just because you lack the discipline, though you do. You wouldn't survive because the system requires you to accept your own exploitation as normal, beautiful, even noble. It requires you to smile while you're being harmed. It requires you to perform grace while you're in pain. It requires you to find your identity in a role that fundamentally denies your autonomy. Modern people, raised with concepts of individual rights, bodily autonomy, and personal choice, would break under this. The cognitive dissonance between what you've been taught you deserve and what the system offers would destroy you. The women who became geisha and survived for decades weren't weak. They were incredibly strong, adapting to an impossible system and finding ways to maintain their humanity within crushing constraints. But strength shouldn't be measured by the ability to endure exploitation gracefully. The geisha world created moments of genuine beauty, a perfect dance, a masterfully played shamisen piece, an elegant tea ceremony, a conversation that sparkled with wit and intelligence. These moments were real and valuable, but they were built on a foundation of broken children, stolen childhoods, debt, bondage, sexual exploitation, and a system designed to extract maximum value from women while giving them minimal autonomy. You can appreciate the art while condemning the system. You can respect the women who survived while criticizing the structure that required their survival skills. You can acknowledge the cultural value while demanding we never recreate those conditions. The next time you see a beautiful photo of a geisha, white makeup perfect, kimono stunning, pose graceful, remember what you now know. Remember the 6-year-old sold by her family. Remember the years of brutal training. Remember the debt that could never be repaid. Remember the performances of pleasure for men you didn't choose. Remember the knees destroyed by decades of kneeling. Remember the aging geisha watching her earning power fade with her youth. Remember the beautiful lie that consumption of your entire life was worthwhile because you preserved traditional arts. The beauty is real. The exploitation is also real. You can't have one without the other, not in the historical geisha system, and that's why you wouldn't last. Not a week, not a day, not an hour, because surviving as a geisha meant accepting the unacceptable and calling it art. If this video shattered your romanticized notions about geisha life, good. Reality is more important than pretty illusions. Hit that subscribe button for more historical deep dives that destroy comfortable myths and show you what life actually looked like in the past. Thanks for watching, and remember, the past was brutal in ways we can barely imagine, wrapped in aesthetics designed to make us forget the human cost. Until next time, good night.